In 2022, 14 million people tried to buy Taylor Swift tickets at the same time. The website crashed. Millions got nothing. And when tickets appeared on resale sites minutes later, the same seats were selling for 10 times the original price. This was not an accident. This was the business model. And the company behind it had been running this exact playbook for 30 years, buying up the entire live music industry piece by piece until there was nowhere else to go. No alternative, no competition, just them. And their name is Ticketmaster. And 3 weeks ago, a federal jury in New York officially confirmed what every music fan has known for decades. Ticketmaster is a monopoly. It broke the law. And it has been overcharging you for every single ticket you ever bought. This is the story of how one company took control of live music, how they got away with it for 30 years, and what the most important antitrust verdict in a generation actually means for the price of your next concert ticket. To understand Ticketmaster, you need to go back to 1976. Two college students in Arizona, Albert Leffler and Gordon Gunn, had a simple idea. What if you could buy concert tickets over the phone instead of standing in line for hours? The idea was genuinely good. Fans loved it. Venues loved it. By 1982, Ticketmaster had spread across the country. Then, in 1991, a man named Fred Rosen took over as CEO, and everything changed. Rosen had one insight that would reshape the entire music industry. Venues needed ticket sales, but fans needed the venues, which meant if you controlled the ticketing, you controlled everything. He made it his mission to sign every major venue to exclusive contracts. The deal was simple. Ticketmaster would share a portion of its service fees with the venue. In exchange, the venue could only use Ticketmaster. No other ticketing company allowed, ever. Venues signed because the money was good. Artists had no choice. By the mid-1990s, Ticketmaster controlled ticketing at over 80% of major venues in America. They had built a wall around the entire live music industry, and they were just getting started. In 1994, Pearl Jam tried to fight back. The band wanted to do a tour with lower ticket prices, no service fees. They tried to book venues that didn't use Ticketmaster exclusively. They found almost none. Ticketmaster had locked them all up. Pearl Jam went to Congress. They testified that Ticketmaster was a monopoly, that it was hurting fans and artists. Congress listened, did an investigation, and then did nothing. Ticketmaster walked away without a scratch. Archibald, Pearl Jam Congress, 1994. And with Congress neutralized, Ticketmaster had no reason to hold back. Service fees climbed from 5% to 10% to 15%, then 20%, then 30%. A $50 ticket now cost $80 by the time you checked out. And there was nowhere else to buy it. Then came 2010, the move that would change everything. Ticketmaster merged with Live Nation, the largest concert promoter in the world. One company now controlled ticketing and concert promotion and venue management, the entire food chain of live music, under one roof. Think about what this meant. Live Nation books the artist. Live Nation promotes the tour. Live Nation owns or operates the venue. And Ticketmaster, owned by Live Nation, sells every ticket. At every step of the process, the money flows back to the same company. The Department of Justice approved the merger, but only on one condition. Ticketmaster was forbidden from retaliating against venues that chose other ticketing companies. No threatening to pull concerts from venues that switched away from Ticketmaster. The DOJ called this a firewall. Ticketmaster immediately ignored it. Internal emails later revealed in court showed Ticketmaster employees discussing how to threaten venues, how to blacklist promoters who worked with competitors, how to make sure no alternative to Ticketmaster could survive. The firewall lasted about 2 weeks. Let's talk about the fees. When you buy a $50 ticket on Ticketmaster today, here is what you actually pay. Service fee, up to 30%. Order processing fee, $5. Facility charge, set by the venue but collected by Ticketmaster. Delivery fee, even for digital tickets. By the time you check out, a $50 ticket costs between $75 and $90. And then came dynamic pricing, a system where ticket prices change in real time based on demand, similar to airline pricing, except airlines have competition. Ticketmaster doesn't. In 2024, when Oasis announced their reunion tour, tickets listed at £135 instantly jumped to £355 under dynamic pricing. Fans were outraged. Archie won. Oasis dynamic pricing controversy. The UK Competition Authority launched an investigation. Politicians called it price gouging. Ticketmaster called it supply and demand. What they didn't mention was that they own both the supply and the demand infrastructure. They set the floor. They control the resale market. They profit twice on the same ticket. Then came November 2022. Taylor Swift announced the Eras Tour, the most anticipated concert tour in years. Ticketmaster announced a special verified fan presale to keep out bots and scalpers. 14 million people registered. On sale day, the website crashed. Fans who had been waiting for hours were kicked out of queues. Error messages everywhere. People who had verification codes couldn't use them. The pre-sale was chaos. Ticketmaster canceled the general sale entirely, citing extraordinary demand. Within hours, tickets appeared on resale sites at 5 to 10 times face value. Some floor tickets were listed at $20,000. Fans who had waited for years to see Taylor Swift had two choices: pay an extortionate resale price or miss the tour entirely. Archie. Taylor Swift fans, Ticketmaster crash news. Congress was furious. Senators from both parties, Republican and Democrat, publicly called out Ticketmaster. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin said, quote, "It's time to break up Ticketmaster." Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino was summoned to testify. Archibald, Senate hearing. Ticketmaster 2023. The hearing was extraordinary. Senator after senator, many of whom had never agreed on anything, united in fury at Ticketmaster. Senator Amy Klobuchar presented data showing Ticketmaster's fees had increased 75% in the last decade, while ticket price.
Ticketmaster ought to look in the mirror and say, I'm the problem. It's me.
Along with Senator Klobuchar as chair. To be honest, I had hoped, as of a few months ago, to get the gavel back, but once again, she's chair captain, and I'm on the bleachers. So,
to have a strong capitalist system, you have to have competition. You can't have too much consolidation, something that unfortunately for this country, as a ode to Taylor Swift, I will say, we know all too well.
a purchaser of
Senator after senator, many of whom had never agreed on anything, united in fury at Ticketmaster. Senator Amy Klobuchar presented data showing Ticketmaster's fees had increased 75% in the last decade, while ticket prices for top artists had tripled. Archie Lone, Senator Klobuchar
put in place a consent decree with a set of conditions and divestitures designed to ensure competition in ticketing and live entertainment markets. Unfortunately, that consent decree does not appear to have been effective. In the decade plus since the merger, Live Nation has consolidated its dominant position in the ticketing and live entertainment markets and the result is a competition-killing strategy that has left artists and fans paying the price. Before turning to Senator Graham, I'd like to thank Senator Klobuchar, who's brought competition policy to the forefront of our national conversation as chair of the Subcommittee on Competition Policy, Antitrust, and Consumer Rights, and also thank her ranking member, Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Senator Klobuchar and Senator Lee asked for this hearing and have led the effort in putting it together. They have assembled an expert panel of witnesses who will
Ticketmaster hearing. The Live Nation CEO's answers were described by journalists as evasive. He insisted the company didn't have a monopoly. That competition existed. He named SeatGeek and AXS as alternatives. Senators pointed out that both companies combined controlled less than 10% of major venue ticketing. Ticketmaster controlled 80%. Here is the market share data that was presented at the hearing. Ticketmaster, 80% of primary ticketing at major venues. Live Nation, 60% of concert promotion for major artists. AEG Presents, second largest promoter, a distant 20%. Everyone else combined, the remaining scraps. On May 23, 2024, the Department of Justice made its move. Attorney General Merrick Garland stood at a podium and said 4 words that hadn't been said about a major American company in decades. Quote, "It is time to break it up." Archie 1. Merrick Garland DOJ press conference. The DOJ was joined by 40 state attorneys general. The lawsuit alleged Live Nation had illegally monopolized the live entertainment industry, that it had used its dominant position to crush competition, that it had repeatedly violated the terms of its 2010 merger agreement, and that ordinary music fans were paying the price. The lawsuit detailed specific tactics. Ticketmaster threatened venue managers with losing top concerts if they experimented with rival ticketers. Live Nation used its control of touring to pressure artists into using its venues. Artists who tried to work outside the Live Nation ecosystem found themselves suddenly unable to book top venues. The most damaging evidence was Ticketmaster's own internal emails. Employees joking about competitors, executives discussing how to turn off services for venues that looked at alternatives. One email described their strategy as, quote, "We own the venues, so we own the market." This email was written in 2019. The DOJ merger agreement was still technically in force. The trial began on March 2, 2026, in the Southern District of New York. Live Nation brought an army of lawyers. The government brought evidence. 40 states brought their anger. And the music industry, for the first time in 30 years, had a real chance at change. Over 6 weeks, economists testified about the cost of monopoly power. Former venue managers described being threatened. Artists testified anonymously about pressure they faced to use Live Nation exclusively. The picture that emerged was of a company that had spent 3 decades systematically destroying every competitor. 1 week into the trial, the DOJ settled $280 million. A significant fine, but not the breakup the government had originally demanded. 40 state attorneys general refused to accept the deal. They called it inadequate. They continued the case. 3 weeks ago, after 4 days of deliberations, the jury returned its verdict. Live Nation and Ticketmaster operated as a monopoly. They violated antitrust law. They overcharged consumers by $1.72 on every single ticket sold. Every single ticket. For years. You do the math. Ticketmaster sells approximately 500 million tickets per year at $1.72 per ticket. That is $860 million in overcharges annually. Over the period covered by the lawsuit, billions of dollars taken from music fans and funneled to one company. The reaction was immediate. New York Attorney General Letitia James said, quote, "A jury found what we have long known to be true. Live Nation and Ticketmaster are breaking the law and costing consumers millions of dollars in the process." Archival. Ticketmaster verdict news coverage. Now comes the hard part. The judge will hold a second trial to decide the remedy. The states want a full structural breakup, force Live Nation to sell Ticketmaster entirely. Others have proposed behavioral remedies, new rules about how Ticketmaster can operate. If the judge orders a full breakup, it would be the most significant antitrust action against an American company since the government broke up AT&T in 1982. It would reshape live music, give venues real choices, force Ticketmaster to compete for business instead of controlling it. Economists estimate that real competition in live ticketing could reduce service fees by 30 to 50%. On a $100 ticket, that means $20 to $30 back in the fan's pocket. Multiplied across hundreds of millions of tickets, it represents billions of dollars returned to consumers. But there is a catch. These legal processes move slowly. Even if the judge orders a break, Ticketmaster will appeal. The case could drag through the courts for years. Fans who suffered through the Taylor Swift debacle in 2022 might be waiting until 2028 or 2029 before anything actually changes. And there is a deeper problem that the antitrust case doesn't fully address. Ticketmaster's monopoly hasn't just hurt fans. It has fundamentally changed the economics of live music for artists. When one company controls 80% of ticketing and 60% of promotion, artists have very little negotiating power. Mid-level artists, bands that aren't Taylor Swift, often take home less than 50% of ticket revenue after paying venue fees, promotion fees, and ticketing fees, all of which increasingly flow back to Live Nation. The consolidation of the industry has created a world where only the biggest artists can make real money from touring. Small venues have been squeezed out. The number of independent, mid-sized venues in America has declined by 40% since 2005. As Live Nation acquired more venues and locked in more exclusive deals, the spaces where new artists could develop an audience disappeared. This matters beyond just ticket prices. The diversity of live music, the local bands, the regional tours, the venues where you discover your favorite artist before they're famous. All of this has been hollowed out by a company optimizing for profit extraction rather than musical culture. The question that hangs over all of this is, how did we let it get this far? The DOJ approved the merger in 2010, despite warnings from economists and artists. The conditions they attached were immediately violated. Congress held hearings in 1994 and did nothing. They held more hearings in 2023 and waited 2 more years before filing suit. Part of the answer is lobbying. Live Nation spent millions influencing politicians. In election cycles between 2010 and 2024, the company and its executives donated to politicians on both sides of the aisle. Several members of Congress who sat on the committees overseeing entertainment industry regulation received campaign contributions from Live Nation. The other part of the answer is that monopolies are slow to form and even slower to challenge. By the time regulators decided to act, Ticketmaster had spent 30 years embedding itself into every part of live music. The cost of unwinding is enormous, which is exactly what Ticketmaster was counting. The jury verdict 3 weeks ago was a historic moment. For the first time in 3 decades, the court confirmed what fans, artists, and economists had been saying since Pearl Jam walked into Congress in 1994. The system was rigged, and Ticketmaster built the rigging. Whether the remedy will match the scale of the problem That's still unclear. Breakup or behavioral remedies. Years of appeals or a swift resolution. Real competition returning to live music or a superficial restructuring that leaves Ticketmaster's power intact. That decision now sits with one federal judge. What we know is this: 30 years of monopoly power, billions in overcharges, a culture of live music hollowed out in the pursuit of profit, and millions of fans who just wanted to see their favorite artist and got a $40 service fee for the privilege. The next time you pay those fees, now you know exactly where that money goes and who built the system to take it from you. Subscribe. Next week, we cover the company that makes Ticketmaster look small.